Howdy, folks, and welcome back to Healthy Humor. I am your host, Doc MB. I had the opportunity to go up to Big Sky Country, otherwise known as Montana, this weekend. And, we were there for a family reunion, had a great time. But the entire time we were there, it was like I could not drink enough water. I was pounding water out of my Awala. New Awala, just got on that trend. But I was just pounding water the whole time, constantly reapplying moisturizer, and really trying to stay away from anything that might dehydrate me. So, I wasn't really drinking. I wasn't, going out and just standing in the wind. I wasn't going into any saunas. I wasn't doing anything that would have further dehydrated me. Being up there with all the wildfires right now, you can imagine that the air is pretty dry, but I do tend to feel pretty dehydrated and dried out whenever I travel, which, just kind of thinking about it this weekend, Warren said something, about not wanting to drink that much water while we were on the airplane. And then I popped off, and said, well, I've always heard that you're supposed to drink excess water when you travel because traveling, especially by air, dehydrates you. I even specifically had a team nutritionist tell me one time when we were traveling for games that you were supposed to drink one 12-ounce bottle of water for every hour that you're in the air. And I told that to Warren. He said that seems excessive. And I thought about it. I was like, maybe that is excessive. There's no way we're losing that much hydration while we travel in the air. So I thought, well, isn't this the perfect time to do an episode and look up and try to figure out how dehydrated we actually get when we travel? I'm very specifically curious about how dehydrated we get when we travel by air, because, we've all been on a car ride, right? That's not much different than just driving around town in the car. I think we can all handle hydration for that, or at least we should be able to. But, when we travel in the air, we're obviously in much different conditions. Airplanes cruise up around 35,000 feet, which I don't know about you all, but I'm not at 35,000 feet on the everyday, right? That's only something I'm hitting whenever I'm traveling in the air. And being that high up, the air outside your airplane, it's incredibly cold. It has very little moisture in it. And then for the airplane itself, they're compressing and heating that air before it enters into the cabin. So it's staying extremely dry. They're not adding extra moisture back into the air that they're pumping into the cabin. If you think about it, your home, like the humidity in your home, the average is like 30 to 60% humidity. And the average office building is like 30 to 50% humidity. An airplane cabin is 6 to 10% humidity. Sometimes maybe if you're on a different type of aircraft, it can be closer to like 10 or 20%. But even still, at that 20%, that's less than half the average that you're getting at home or at work for air humidity. So it makes sense that you're going to feel dry because some of those aircraft cabins are getting low enough humidity that it's like being in a desert, like actually being in a desert. So it makes sense that you're going to be a little more dehydrated whenever you're traveling through the air. That level of low humidity does increase what they refer to as insensible water loss, which it's not insensible like, oh, it doesn't make sense, but insensible like you can't feel it, right? You can't sense it happening. This isn't, oh, you just ran a marathon and now you've lost buckets of sweat, right? This isn't you've drank a bunch of coffee or tea or some other diuretic and now you can't stop peeing. This is the kind of water evaporation that you get and you don't feel it as it comes out of your skin and your lungs and your mouth, even just like the air you breathe. It's just kind of basically evaporating out of your body without you feeling it until later when you're like, man, I'm so dry. I went ahead and looked at a few different studies that tested hydration levels and looked at loss of hydration from air travel. And basically what most of them found was, yes, you are losing some level of hydration again through that insensible dehydration, but it's not anything substantial enough. Like, no one's becoming clinically dehydrated from flying. The World Health Organization even notes that low cabin humidity causes discomfort, but does not require people to drink substantially more water than usual, which means that all these years that I've just been chugging bottles of water whenever I travel in the air, and then having to get up multiple times to pee on the plane, was it necessary? Was it probably not bad for me? I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, they say you're supposed to get up and walk around the cabin and do stuff like that if you can. And, I like to stretch my legs. But did I need to chug so much water that I was, risking popping a leak on the plane as I'm trying to scooch out from my seatmates? No, I did not need to be doing that. So where do we think my nutritionist back in college was getting the whole, 12 ounces for every hour you're in the air rule? Well, I couldn't find anything that specifically said that. And it kind of seems like basically that started from, like online wellness blogs or airline wellness blogs, things like that. So it was probably one of those things where, enough people say it that eventually we just assume it must be true. It must be evidence-based because so many people have repeated it. And that's why, I started this podcast in the first place, is there's so much misinformation out there around health and wellness and, what has been research backed and what hasn't been. And this is just another example of something that it sounds so good that you think it must be true, right? This must be evidence-based. Or in my case, I'm hearing it from a licensed professional. And turns out this is just another one of those things that enough people were saying it and enough people with credentials that we started to believe them. But in reality, there is nothing that says that we are losing a substantial enough amount of water that we should be excessively consuming water to rehydrate ourselves. So, am I still going to travel with my big dumb cup, my big water bottle every time I go on an airplane ride? Yeah, I am, because it makes me feel better to feel like I'm staying hydrated. But am I going to feel as anxious about needing to rehydrate? No, not after this episode. I'm not going to. Now, you might be asking yourself the same questions that I was asking myself, which is, okay, if it doesn't dehydrate you that much to travel by air, why do I still feel so dehydrated whenever I travel? And not just like, oh, my lips feel a little dry, whatever, but I am peeing noticeably less, and it's, not the same clear and copious that my Boy Scout father taught me my pee should be, or that my nutrition classes taught me it should be either. And instead, it's, a little darker than normal. I'm not peeing as much, and I do feel dehydrated. So why is that? Well, let's ask ourselves, where are we traveling to? Right? In my case, I was in Missoula, Montana, the majority of the time, which sits like 2,000 feet higher above sea level than where Tulsa is. And then when I wasn't in Missoula proper, I was up at Glacier National Park on the side of a mountain on Logan's Pass, which is, like 7,000 feet. I might be a little bit wrong on that, but it's around 7,000 feet when you're up there. So of course I was feeling dehydrated. The air's thinner, the humidity was lower, and it was even lower humidity than normal because of all of the wildfires. So I'm clearly losing a lot more hydration during that time than I would normally. And same thing, like if you're traveling, you're experiencing this dry, air cabin air that's dehydrating you, and then you're going somewhere that's at a higher elevation or just lower humidity than where you're at home, you're probably gonna feel dehydrated. So we don't need to worry about, every hour that I'm in the air, I need to drink, a whole bottle of water, or, whatever that would equate to once you got back on the ground. Like, I was in the air for 3 hours, so now I need to have 3 bottles of water. You don't need to do that. Just do your normal hydration, right? Like if you're thirsty, drink some water. Normal practices, right? And on that note, I mean, when you're traveling, you're probably doing other things besides just being in a new place. You're probably doing things you don't normally drink at home. Like, personally, I love to max out on my vacations and do as much as I can while I'm gone, which oftentimes, I mean, like this trip to Missoula, we were, my average steps every day, I was up well over 10,000 steps every day, even though I didn't feel like I was getting that many steps, just because we were so active. I mean, we were going on hikes, or we were walking around the downtown, or, hiking down to the river to go fishing, whatever we were doing, we were moving. And so, we were quite busy. I was drinking a lot more caffeine than I would normally drink at home, and coffee is a mild diuretic. So that was obviously adding to the dehydration that I was feeling. And same thing, like, oh, you went on a fun girls trip to Cabo. Were you drinking a lot while you were there? On top of air travel, on top of being somewhere where you're, probably getting wind whipped doing outside activities the whole time, you're going to be dehydrated. That alcohol will dehydrate you a lot faster than the air travel wear will. And if you're drinking on the plane, that's just, you're double downing on how dehydrated you're going to get. And then not to mention, what kind of snacks are you eating in the airport? What snacks are they giving you on the plane? Are they giving you salty ass pretzels and peanuts and popcorn, right? That's going to dehydrate you as well. So let's stick to some, more hydrating foods. You don't have to. I know so many people who, whenever they travel, especially by air, they eat all these unhealthy snacks that they wouldn't normally eat. And it's like, why do we think that travel, especially air travel, gives us an excuse to eat all the snacks we would normally not have at home, right? Like, if your normal snack at home is some fruits and vegetables or yogurt or something like that, why is it that when you travel, the only snack I see you eating are sour gummy bears and salty popcorn, right? Like, why do we do that to ourselves? We just kind of add to this feeling of dehydration or just not feeling well while we travel. And then on top of that, if you're like me and you're busy the whole time while you're traveling, you're probably not getting the best sleep, or you're certainly not getting as much sleep as you should be getting to recover from that travel. So really focusing on, try to eat like you normally would. Make sure you're drinking water or eating hydrating foods if you feel dehydrated, and focus on getting some good quality sleep and not overdoing it. Just because we're on vacation doesn't mean that we need to put our bodies through unnecessary trauma, right? We don't need to go binge drink alcohol. We don't need to dehydrate ourselves. We don't need to deprive ourselves of the sleep that we need. And same thing, if you're on a busy travel trip like I typically have, where you are getting excess steps, well, that excess exercise is going to lead to excess water loss. So yeah, you should, rehydrate a little bit more. If you're someone who's into taking electrolytes, yeah, I mean, if you're really doing a lot of things that are causing you to lose a lot of water, again, excessive physical activity, or you got sick while you were traveling, you've had some vomit, diarrhea issues going on, yeah, go ahead and take some electrolytes. But do I need electrolytes for my 1.5 hour flight to Denver from Tulsa and then my 2 hour flight from Denver to Missoula? No, I probably don't need extra electrolytes for that. Did I need to probably have some electrolytes whenever I was hiking Logan's Pass? Probably, yeah. And more of that wasn't even because the activity was so hard, but just because I was at higher elevation on top of everything else, right? So I guess just practical tips going forward from this episode. Start hydrated. Don't start your travel already dehydrated. Hydrate before you leave. Don't board a flight thirsty. And if you feel dehydrated at some point or you have thirst, drink some water or drink whatever liquid you need to hydrate yourself. An easy way to do that when you travel so that you're not also just buying bottles of water all left and right, take your reusable water bottle. If you're someone who carries around a big dumb cup whenever you're home, you probably need to be someone who carries one around with you while you're traveling, or you're going to start feeling that dehydration. And don't worry about trying to chug water. Just slowly rehydrate, sip it regularly. I'm not sponsored by Awala, but now that I have this new Awala bottle, I can tell you that I love just sipping water out of it, and I feel like I am doing a better job of staying hydrated with it, which is something I usually struggle with in the summer because I am so busy. Other good tips for while you're traveling to stay hydrated: limit your alcohol consumption if you can. Now, again, if you're on a bachelor or bachelorette trip or something else like that, it might be difficult to limit your alcohol, but just make sure you're doing a really good job of rehydrating or prehydrating before and after you're drinking on those kinds of trips. Eat a lot of fruit. Fruit helps you hydrate. And if you're on a trip to somewhere fun, if you're somewhere tropical, they might have some really great fresh fruit. Or if you're somewhere like where I was, they had the most delicious cherries and huckleberries up there. So we had a lot of those while we were up there. Now, are those as good at hydrating you as something like, watermelon or grapes or oranges or something like that? No, but were they still delicious and definitely more hydrating than one of those salty airport snacks that we might have taken with us off the plane? Yeah, they were obviously much better than that. Now, my next tip here may not be for everybody, but pack whatever moisturizers you enjoy. If it's lip balm or eye drops, or you're someone who needs a nasal spray, pack that with you. Personally, I cannot live without chapstick and hand lotion. My hands get dry, and I absolutely hate the feeling of chapped lips, to the point that I even make Warren carry extra chapstick with him for me. I bought multiple new chapsticks or lip balms to bring with us on this trip, and I put them in multiple of Warren's pockets so that I knew that he had them in case I didn't have one, or also just to make sure he has one, because I don't want to kiss his crusty lips if he's getting dehydrated from travel. So if you're traveling somewhere that's extra dry, definitely take into consideration these tips, but also don't do the things that might cause you to lose more water. Okay, I feel like this was probably the most rambly of ramble episodes I've ever had, but I really liked it. And I think probably the biggest surprise for me in preparing for this episode was definitely how much I thought traveling did dehydrate you compared to what it actually does. And also just understanding that the dehydration that we feel or think we feel doesn't actually equate to clinical dehydration, right? You can feel dehydrated, you can feel dried out, but you're probably not approaching anything that's going to require medical intervention, right? Just drink some water, moisturize your skin and your lips, and make smart choices while you travel. Those are really kind of the biggest takeaways I would say from this episode. Prehydrate, rehydrate, and moisturize. And then just don't be dumb while you travel, and think about where you are and how that might affect you, right? If you're going somewhere with really high altitude, or you're going on a trip where you're going to be super active, you're gonna need to hydrate. So yeah, I hope that you all enjoyed this episode, and I would love to hear from you. Please tell me, do you have a really fun story of getting dehydrated while traveling or feeling dehydrated while traveling, or just a fun travel story? I love travel stories. So please comment on this episode with a fun story, or go ahead and send it to me and I might give you a shout out in the next episode. But otherwise, I hope that everyone stays hydrated and has a happy and healthy day.